Hello again, I am Joe Bob and welcome back to American Midwest. The map has now been updated. We finally have our patch that has changed our train line a little bit and has also made a couple of other little minor tweaks to the farm as well. First thing you will notice is if we move over here, the grass between certain fields has now been removed to allow us to join them together without the same issue that we had before. So this is our soybean crop. As you can see, it's growing quite nicely, and whereas we had a little grass corridor here between the two fields, now we have this just dirt ground texture here. And it's the same up on the map as well. If we take a look between fields 2 and 3, we now have just a strip of dirt between these two fields instead of grass. So that was the first little change that's been done to the map, was to remove those bits of grass that would keep showing through even after you ploughed them, to stop us, from convincingly joining fields together. That's no longer an issue. These were the only two sets of fields where you could actually link fields together, and now we can go ahead and do that, which is great news. The other interesting thing is the train line has changed. Now the route itself hasn't changed. It's still the same one single long continuous loop, but we now have a rail yard up here. So we're going to go and take a quick look at that. And we actually now have 4 trains on the map. They all travel in the same direction, but there are now 4 of them, and each one has a predetermined loop that it goes through when it gets to the train yard. So we're going to head up there and I will show you that right now. We'll just accelerate along here. I'm going to break a few speed laws here. Instead of doing 25, we're doing 70, so we're being a little bit too fast. I just want to sort of get up there so I can quickly show you the changes that have been made. So I'm trying to remember what was up there originally. I don't think it was a field. I think it was just some trees, and I think maybe a body of water was there as well. And as you can see, we now have a couple of small ponds up there. And then we have the field yard itself. So no major changes in terms of ripping up a field or anything like that. But this is the new fiddle yard over here. So let's zoom out a bit. This is our entrance. You can see we've got a few of those indestructible tufts of grass growing through the concrete, which is a bit of a shame. We also have this now. We have a fertilizer and a seed point up here, which is quite useful. And here is the fiddle yard itself. So we have got a little siding here with a nice sort of set of end sleepers, which is basically made out of just big piles of wooden planks. And then we have these automatic kind of splits here, these not quite properly functioning switch points here. It's just all completely linked track, no actual separation of the rails, and each train will automatically follow its own specific route. So there are 4 lines through here. First off, we have this one out here, and this is the first of the trains. This is a logging train. So whereas before we would have different sets of cars on the train, we now have 4 trains, and each one is filled with just one type of car. So as you can see here, our logging train is just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cars that are all designed purely for logs. And then we have a grain train here, so you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 grain carts on that train, which is the second line. And then we hop over here and we have this nice covered awning, which I really like. And the trains will automatically pull through here. The train that normally sits here is currently somewhere else on the map. That's a beet only train, so that has 5 cars of beet wagons. And then we have a second grain train as well, which has another 5 cars that are purely for grain. Now when you first load up the map, once you spawn in, if you have an existing file, I'm not sure about if you start a new file, but if you have an existing file and the train is somewhere on the map, like mine was, it actually stacks all of the trains on top of each other. So you can just drive the trains straight through each other. They don't have collisions with each other. So you can literally pass straight through. And that's kind of, I think, a necessary feature. But I do like the fact that we do have this split here. So this gives you a passing lane for each of the trains. You can kind of bring them up here and store them up here when they're not being used. And then whichever train you then take out, you'll be able to bring around. And as I say, the train automatically splits off onto the relevant rail. So the logging train will always, as it comes down from this direction, as it heads down here, the logging train will always take this line here. That grain train will always go straight on and then straight through here. The beet train will come down here and then will always go this way, and then that train will always take that track, and then obviously they all remerge back over there onto the single lane track that then goes off and rejoins the loop. So nothing substantial that completely alters the railway in some respects. We do now have the ability to transport a lot of product in one go. Actually, I quite like this setup. I think this is a really clever idea. I mean, the railway itself is still very, very long. So it is still going to take you, several minutes to negotiate your way around the map. But if we jump into one of the trains, so I can quickly shuttle across to the missing one, I can perhaps take you on a quick tour of that as it comes through into this section. In fact, actually, let's do it with... I like the logging train having its own distinct branch over here. So you can see it's got this nice set of wood kind of all laid out on the outsides here. I do actually quite like the way that it does have that nice little scenic sort of barrier from the other grain train there. I think perhaps it would have been better if we'd had maybe the two grain trains next to each other, and then next to this one we could have had maybe the beet train, but that's the way that it's been laid out. So everything else about the railway line has, as I say, has remained completely unchanged. So the route itself hasn't changed, the length of the route hasn't changed, the number of available lines hasn't changed. It's still just one single track, but we're going to make our way sort of around, and it's going to take a little while, so I'm going to sort of just pause for a moment, and I will fade back in as we are coming up to where the other train is. So as we make our way along the bottom of the map here, you can see it's actually taken us, if you look at the clock in the top right corner, it's taken us a fair while to sort of make our way around the loop to get to where we're headed. And then from here we're just literally going to drive straight through the train and then back up to the fiddle yard again before we then sort of grab the other train and take that up to the fiddle yard as well. But I just want to show you the train lack of collision on trains, so you can actually see that they can just pass through each other. Now I haven't tried it with them having loads on them, so I don't know if that would make a difference. I don't know if it would or not. Might do, might not do. It might potentially cause some issues. Let's say, for example, a train full of logs driving straight through a load of cars like that might potentially cause some issues. So that's something to be wary of if you do try and pass trains straight through each other like we've just done there, is that I don't know how they're going to react once they're fully loaded. There's no knowing how the log physics in particular, being as unpredictable as they can be, there's no knowing how they would react to having a load of sort of ghosted containers that are full of grain in front of them. It may cause some weird glitchy physics. It may cause logs to just bounce all over the place. It may cause some major issues. I have no idea. I may do some testing in that at some point in the future, but if you test it before you see it on my screen, then because it's going to be a while, I think, before I'm in a position to do that on this farm. If you do that test yourself, please do let me know the results, and if you have a link, I'd love to see the footage of that as well. So I'm just going to make my way around the rest of this loop, and I'll catch up to you again in just a second as we get back to the fiddle yard. So we're approaching the fiddle yard, and you'll see that the train will automatically route now based on which train I'm driving. So this is going to take this first turning here to the left. There we go. And it's just completely automatic. You don't have to do anything, you don't have to change anything, and there's no control options to switch which track you go onto. It's just a completely automatic process. You know, it's predetermined based on which of these 4 trains you're driving as to which lane you will automatically route through. So we'll just try and get this lined up a little bit better. And of course, the other thing as well is that if you have train switching on, like I do, then you will just switch through all 4 of the trains, like this. So this is the other train. This is down here at our root crop sale. Now I have changed this ever so slightly, and this is because I did off camera try and actually sell a few beets and was having some real problems doing it. And it turns out that I thought that having these 2 mods built into each other was actually stopping it from working as a sell point, and it turns out that is not the case. It does actually still work, which is fantastic, but it took me a while to figure it out. And I also tried, you know, selling them both off and repositioning them separately, and it turns out that it's just an incredibly sensitive tip point. You have to tip right back here at the very, very back of it. You try and tip here, and you're just going to get a big pile of beets start to appear on the ground just here, and nothing happens. So when you do tip, whether you have this as a standalone building or if you do what I do and you try and incorporate it into a storage mod as well, it will still work, but you have to hit the tip point here, right at the very back, or else you're just going to get a load of beets pile up on the floor. So you know, we've advanced time a little bit since you were last with us, and that's mainly because I needed to to earn back the money to be able to buy back these buildings and then reposition them again. And we've made a couple of other little tweaks and changes as well, which we'll go through in just a moment. The other minor change that I've done is I bought a couple of conveyor belts. So as you can see, I've actually built these or bought these belts and positioned them just here, so that we now have a loading section for a train. We can basically bring a train up here, park it up, and then, you know, we can just advance any of these wagons underneath our conveyor belt and fill those up. So while we have a sell point here that has a great price, it's obviously subject to fluctuation. The sell price for this part of the mod here is much higher, but you have to do it manually by bucket, or you could kind of cheat a little bit and have a small conveyor tipping in there. And then obviously just here you have to sell by box. So while this will give you a great price, there's a lot of work involved in doing it. If you want to tip in bulk, you'll have to use a different method or a different sell point. So one way of getting around that is waiting for a great demand, and if we get a great demand somewhere else, then we now have a nice easy way to load all of our beets straight from our storage just into a trailer and then tip into there, which will then load up the truck, and we can then load a train up completely. So we're going to take this one back and take this up to the fiddle yard as well, and again you'll see this will automatically route onto the relevant track as soon as we get there. So once again, I will see you as we get back to the fiddle yard. And there you can see we're just automatically routing straight through into this line here, and I need to slam the brakes on, and I don't think I'm going to stop in time. These trains do take an absolute eternity to actually stop. There we go. That's about right. So there we go. That is the new sort of train fiddle yard, complete with 4 trains, each with its own distinctive line. Some auto routing there, and the ability to also kind of pass through each other as well. So yeah, I'm going to leave the trains up here and then just sort of grab one as I need it, kind of thing. But it does also mean that we do have a great way to actually store something else, something like sugarcane, for example. Not only do we have the grain transfer points on the map, but now that we have a train here that can effectively hold sugarcane, I think we can store it in these grain trailers. We can definitely store it in these beet trailers if we want to. We can effectively have a train just permanently full of sugarcane, and each one of these trains or train cars will hold, a substantial amount. I think they hold about 120,000 litres each. So with 5 cars there, you're looking at 600,000 litres that you could store just parked up somewhere on the map, ready, waiting for a time to go and sell it. This map is now, of course, sugarcane ready. That was the other part of the update as well. So, whereas before we had one sell point, which would take sugarcane, which was the bakery, I believe it was, the town bakery. We now, as you see, have 4 sell points that take sugarcane, and you'll be able to plant and harvest and fertilize your sugarcane as well. So this map is now fully compatible with the Platinum Expansion DLC content. Now, I did say that I'd made some other minor changes as well, and another of those minor changes is up here. So nothing really structurally has changed up here, but what I have done is got rid of the food mixer. We're going to be replacing that, and we're going to be using, once we can afford it, the new 32,000 litre modded trailer or modded mixer. So if you come down to animals, this is what we had, this is what we sold. We got around about 32,000 for it, give or take, because we'd actually used it a fair bit. This is the in-game Silo King Self-Line Compact. The 1612 costs 121,000 and has a 16,000 litre capacity. And this is the one that we're going to be using instead. We're going to be using the Prestige 22 M3, costs 150,000, so a little bit more expensive, but has a 32,000 litre capacity, so double the storage capacity of its slightly smaller, official in-game version. The main model itself is pretty much the same size, apart from the tank on the back. It's obviously modelled a little bit bigger, a little bit fatter, so it can kind of show off that extra capacity, and it actually has an evacuation point on both sides of it, whereas the 16,000 litre in-game one only has an evacuation point on one side, which kind of makes it a little bit more critical to be facing in the right direction when you want to actually unload into a food trough. So that's one of the minor things that we changed up here. As you can see, I brought the fertilizer tank up here, seeing as it's going to be filling up from our slurry tank just there, and also the one by the pigs. And this is the other little minor change. I have finally gone ahead and bought a Lely Juno for up here, just because the cows are making so much mess all the time that it saves a bit of hassle about having to constantly come up here just to clean them out and then go away again. So I've got this set up here with an angle of 4,000, and that gives us enough distance to actually cover the entire 5 block food trough there. You can see there's 5 different panels, and to cover the full distance effectively, I found an angle of 4,000 is the best. It gives us proper coverage all the way up to the end of either end of the trough there. So that's the minor change that we've made up here. There is another minor change that I've made as well, which is over by the orchard. We talked about putting in a building to house manure in. Now, we don't have that much manure at the moment. We've got some there, and we've got a little bit just there. It's starting to come back, which is quite nice. So at some point we'll be shoveling some manure over that way, but for now there's nothing in there. But it is going to be a manure store point for our orchard. We do just have the 2 rows of trees at the moment, so 14 orange trees. We are going to be adding in at some point 14 apple trees there as well, although I may just stick to orange trees. I haven't quite decided just yet. But there you can see, I've put it here at the entrance. It does mean it's a little bit tight getting in this way, but I didn't want to move it too far and block good workable grassland on the other side, and keep as much of that as a nice kind of square shaped field over here as well. And we've also bought a small Joskin liquid trans mod as well. This is an 8,000 litre trailer that can hold a variety of different liquids, including water and milk, mainly for the PC guys there, not for us. It can also hold liquid fertilizer and slurry. I think that's everything. Let's just take a quick look at it. It's in the miscellaneous category. This is it just here. So you can see holds water, holds fuel, holds milk, holds slurry, holds liquid fertilizer, and holds digestate. So it holds pretty much everything there. A slightly larger capacity than the standard in-game Joskin wagon, which holds 7,300 litres. And I think the price is actually slightly better as well. So yeah, we've got one of those. It's fully loaded with water, and that's, again, just so we can keep our trees nice and hydrated. And then the manure we're going to store in this section just here, so that we can just bring a whole load up, store it in there, and then it'll make it much easier to actually just bring something up here and maintain our orchard. We may even potentially just have a skid steer or something up here. Whatever we do bring up needs to be able to obviously hook up to this, so maybe a skid steer might not be the right tractor, but we could bring something up here that will be able to shovel the manure onto the trees and obviously tow the water trailer as well. And seeing as we're up here at this part of the map, I figured I may as well show you that little dirt corridor that we now have between fields 2 and 3. So again, this was a strip of indestructible grass that has now been removed. We have this little dirt corridor, which means that, you know, these two fields can now be effectively joined together without any kind of issue whatsoever. It also gives us a nice little shortcut straight through from one farm to the other. To a point, we do have the water here, which makes it a little bit trickier. You know, you can try and cut across the railway lines if you want to, but yeah, we do have that kind of little route just there. So as we head back to the main farm, not really anything has changed down here. You know, we've obviously done a little bit of work on our field, so our soybean is growing in very nicely. It's in its final growth stage now before it'll be ready to be harvested. It does need a little bit of fertilizing, but hardly anything at all. And then our sunflower crop has been planted now, so we've cultivated the radish and planted sunflower. They're now in their first stage of growth, and we're going to get a worker up and running with a weeder to actually start applying that last little bit of fertilization that we need. But if you remember, we had that small long strip on our soybean field that wasn't actually growing in, or at the same, well, it was growing in at the same rate, but wasn't fertilized at the same rate because we had a patch that got cultivated a little bit too soon before the radish had grown in. So we're just going to quickly do that little strip, and we'll have to do that one manually, I think. We may not be able to do it actually as well. I mean, this is in its final growth stage, which may prevent us actually from being able to fertilize it. It's really thick as well. You can hardly see through the crop, which is going to make it really difficult to see if we can actually get in there and see visually if the fertilizer is going down. We're going to have to refer to the mini-map a lot, or the in-game map, I think. Still getting some frame rate juddering on this map, which is a bit unfortunate, but it's not, you know, the end of the world. So if we look at the composition here, you can see we do have that little strip just there. I want to see if I can actually fertilize it, but as this is in the final stage, I think it is going to say no, it's just not going to accept it. If I remember rightly, weeders now only work in stages 1 and 2 of growth. In stage 3, they stop working. So I'm just trying to get lined up. We're about here. If I try and hire a worker, he will actually work, but I don't think he'll do anything to the field. So let's zoom in a bit and switch off and switch back. And as you can see, look, it's not applying any fertilizer, which is what I expected. So we're just going to have a strip there that isn't going to be, you know, stage 3. It's going to be stage 2. Same with that little bottom corner there. We're going to have a small section there that's just a very tiny patch that's not fully fertilized. In the long run, it's not going to hurt us. And then once we've done this harvest, we can actually link these two fields together, plough that strip out, and make that all one big piece of field. So that's good. Looking forward to getting that done. In terms of the rest of our crops that need fertilising, you can see our corn, which is still growing in, that's fully fertilised as well. We just have one stage of fertiliser left to apply to our sunflowers on 10 and 12. So we're going to get a worker to go and do that for us. And while he's doing that, we are going to mow and apply a second cut to the field by the BGA. Then we're going to get it all rowed up and start transferring that into the BGA bunker itself, so we can start to make some silage. We're not hurting for money. We're actually making quite a nice little bit of cash now. The money from our trees is coming in and giving us a pretty substantial boost to our income across an entire day. And our cows are making, you know, a very large amount of money via the milk as well. So we're actually doing really, really well for money. We are making quite a nice, tasty profit every day without even needing to sell anything. Now, it may seem a little excessive to have an income where we're making maybe 50,000 a day in total profit without actually doing anything. But given how expensive the fields are on this map and how many of them there are, I don't think it's a major issue. You know, I have been wary of money in the past, not wanting to make it too easy and actually have to work to unlock things, and we are still going to have to do that on this farm. You know, despite the fact that we have the orchard producing a nice little bit of cash, and the fact that our cows are bringing in a very large amount of money every day, we are still paying out, you know, a fair bit in terms of our animal expenses, our equipment upkeep costs, which are only going to get higher as the game progresses. And, you know, as I say, the fields are horrendously expensive. I would love to have field 11 here as a pretty soon, so that we can actually maybe do some corn chaffing on here. But that means we need to buy a big X, and even the smaller one of those is going to set us back a few $100,000. And then this field in itself is also very expensive, as you can see, $866,500 to buy this field. So just to get this field and a corn chaffer is going to cost us over $1 million. So making $50,000 a day without actually selling anything, it's a drop in the ocean to some of the expenses that we have coming up. Here you can see $275,000 for the Big X, and then to get the matching header for it is another $28,000. So you're talking over $300,000 for the harvester and the header. And then when you combine that with this field, we're talking $1.1 million. $50,000 a day is a drop in the ocean compared to that. So we're still going to have to work for things. Don't worry about that. So we're back up at our animal farm, hooking up to our Lely front mower. And we have our Coon rear mower behind us to collect as well. Make our way back down to that BGA field so we can get that second cut done. Then we'll use our Coon merger to link those together. Combine all those into pretty large windrows, and then we'll obviously use our Lely collector to start collecting up all of that grass and transfer that into the BGA so we can start making some silage. We need a lot of cash, as you've just seen, to buy some fields and to buy some equipment, and I want to buy a Big M as well. You know, that's going to set us back again around about $290,000. So a lot of very expensive equipment that we need, and while we still have some sort of TMR made in our forage and chip silo, we are eventually going to run out of that as well. So we're going to need to mix up some more of that. So we are going to need to find another $150,000 as well to buy that mixer. So plenty of expense still way ahead of us. It's not really shortcutting that much. When you factor in not just wage costs as well, but costing of that equipment, and then the costing of seeding and fertilizing. Well, the fertilizing not so much, because we're trying to do it all naturally. But when you consider the cost of the seeds, you know, that's extra expense every time as well. So yeah, our expense is not huge, but it's there. And as we get that bigger and more expensive equipment onto the farm, those expenses will pretty soon start to skyrocket. Plus, we don't really do that much in the way of silage. I mean, we've done a little bit on Big Bud Farm, and we will have more of that coming up when the series returns in January. But that's pretty much it. I mean, we did a little bit on Drummard just to raise some cash, but we didn't do a huge amount of it because the silage on that map was so good in terms of the value. It was 4 times higher than every other map out there. So to do an awful lot of silage on that map is definitely what I call a little bit cheaty. When you're making $1,000 on hard difficulty per 1,000 litres, or more than that, 1,100 I think we were getting, that's just too high. So right, you can see the grass has regrown, so it's time for us to get set up like so. Let's get the rear mower folded and lowered. Just back up a touch. There we go. Turn that on. This is where it's going to get a little bit messy. Trying to double up these lines of grass. We're going to have a lot to collect once this is done. A lot to merge as well. We're going to end up with some pretty fat windrows, I think. So we should be filling up our lely collector pretty quickly every time we get onto the field. But grass silage, while it's a great way to make silage with minimal expense incurred, it's not, a great way to fill a bunker. It can take an awful lot of grass to fill a bunker. Obviously a much better way is to chaff crops, and we haven't done corn chaffing at all. So we're going to be doing it on a smaller scale on this farm, using the Big X 580. And then again, we're going to be getting into some corn chaffing in the new year on Big Bud Farm to really raise a bit of extra cash using the Big X 1100. We will be upgrading our Big X to the larger of the two there, because Big Bud Farm is all about the big equipment. It's the go big or go home playlist that we have. So we're always looking to have the biggest stuff that we can on that map. I have actually been doing some preparation work in the background in my spare time when I get a moment to try and prep that for its return in January. So things will have changed quite a bit when we go back there compared to where we left off. We'll have a quick recap on where we were, and again we'll do a what's changed, this is what's new on the first video that we do for Big Bud Farm in January, but we are now just closing in on that. And I have a confirmed moving date as well. I've been talking about moving recently. It's caused a little bit of havoc in terms of recording. I've been able to do some, move some of my stuff, some of my possessions in stages, but I will now be properly moving in just a couple of days, which means this is going to be maybe potentially the last one of these videos that we see for a couple of weeks on this series. It depends how quickly I can get everything set up and get caught back up again in my recordings to try and get back on track and get back onto schedule once I'm all settled in the new place. But one thing I will be using in the new place, once I've got it all set up, is a wheel. We had the Black Friday sales, and I had a little bit of money squirreled away, not a huge amount. I was looking at maybe if I could find a cheap one, picking up a small 4K display, and then the move became a reality, and so the money that I had saved up for that was no longer enough, because I needed that money for other things like like moving. But I did have enough of that left to treat myself, as obviously Christmas is coming up and my birthday as well, both in the same month. So every now and again, I don't do it every year, but I like to treat myself where I can and get myself a sort of a joint birthday Christmas kind of purchase. And with Black Friday, there was a great deal here in the UK on the G29 steering wheel. So normally the sort of recommended retail price for that is £300, which is very expensive. That is somewhere in the region of I think $430, $440. Very expensive. I mean, it's very rare you'll actually see it priced at 300 in the UK. Usually you tend to see them somewhere in the region of, say, 220 to 250, maybe a little bit more. Depends on where you look and also what time of year as well. But Amazon were actually selling them for £129 at Black Friday for the wheel and pedal set. No shifter. I didn't see the point in getting a shifter. I didn't want to pay another 30 quid for one of those, but 130 for the steering wheel and pedal combo. Very much affordable. Very much something I really wanted. Partly for my Formula 1 playlist that I'll be doing in January. Look forward to that one. That's going to be pretty good. I'm really looking forward to racing with a wheel. It's going to be the first time in many years. I think nearly 20 years. No, about 20 years since I've actually been able to use a wheel with my gaming. I had an old steering wheel set with pedals on my PlayStation 1 back in the days of the original TOCA racing game. And that was so much fun to use. Really enjoyed it. You know, racing on TOCA and Colin McRae Rally with that wheel and pedal set was so much fun. And I've just never really had the money in the past to buy another wheel since then. You know, I didn't have one for my PS2. I didn't have one for my PS3. Really wanted one, but just never had the money available to me to buy one. And I wasn't expecting to get one for the PS4 either, but you know, with that deal, it was just too good to pass up. I had enough tucked away to kind of just about afford it. So I have a wheel. It's actually sat right next to me as we're doing this. Still boxed. I've had it for nearly a week, and I opened the box to check it was there and took it out and looked at it and kind of went, oh, can't wait to get hands on actually using this, and then immediately just, you know, put it back in the box. I haven't even tried setting it up yet, simply because I didn't want to have to sort of get everything unpacked and set up and then take it all apart again a few days later. So I'm still eagerly waiting to try that wheel out, but I bought that, you know, as I say, for my Formula 1. I bought it so I could also try it here on Farming Simulator, and since then we've also had the news, since I bought it, that Spin Tires, which gets its first patch, proper patch on the console, it'll be the second patch for the PC. I think the patch is already live on PC. It goes live on console in the next couple of weeks. That patch will be bringing a few different things. It'll be bringing a new camera mode. From what I understand, it'll also be bringing working wing mirrors, although that may just be a PC thing and not a console thing. I'm not entirely sure. And the other thing, the big thing that it's really going to be bringing, is wheel support for console users as well. So I buy a wheel and immediately another game that I play is getting a patch to include wheel support, and you can bet that the G29 is going to be way at the top of the list of compatible wheels. So yeah, really looking forward to playing some Spin Tires when the patch goes live with the new wheel. That is going to be fantastic as well, and obviously I will put that on the channel as well, so you'll be able to see the difference in my in my driving style, you know, cruising through the mud using a wheel and pedal. I wonder if we'll actually get a fully customizable gearbox and have, you know, all the gears rather than just an automatic gearbox. That would be kind of cool. I know the PC can do that, but I don't know if that was built in or if that was a mod. I think that was built in, so maybe we'll get that as part of the wheel support patch for Spin Tires. Who knows? Time will tell. I'd say we're still a couple of weeks away from that patch, So we're just going to have to wait and see at this stage. But yeah, really, really looking forward to that as well. So 3 main games that I play quite a bit of, all going to have, you know, fantastic wheel support. Couldn't not have worked out better. Getting to the end of cutting this grass here, you can see we just have a thin strip that's left over. So just one final pass to make, and then we are done and dusted in terms of mowing. You can see how thick the grass coverage is on this field now that we have 2 cuts. Once we start rowing this up, we're going to end up with some very, very fat rows. This is going to be, you know, quite a challenge to row this up effectively, I think, without making, you know, the rows too big to work with. There we go. Oops. So let's get our mowers back to the farm at the top, swap them out, well, clean them up first, and then swap them out for the windrower, come back down, and we will start rowing all of this grass up. Okay, so we're at the field here. Let's get unfolded. This is where it's going to get a little bit tricky. Trying to get this thing positioned just right. So this thing dumps out left, then right, then centre. That's the standard setup for this. So that, I think, should change configuration. Do a quick little test. That's still spitting out left. Alright, let's. We're going to have to use the help menu. I like to try and do this without. I was pressing the wrong shoulder button. There we go. Work right. Yes, there we go. That's better. So we'll do a border. Nice and easy around here. Do a border around the field. Just to give us a little bit of sort of wiggle room. This is mainly for the ends of the fields than the sides. You know, the bits where we're going to be having to make our turns, that's essentially what the border is for, just to give us a little bit of room. Sometimes I do it as a centre spit out, sometimes I do it into the field like we're doing this time round, but I always like to make sure that I don't have too close to the edge of the field, just so that we have room to actually make the turns with the loading wagon, so that we can actually collect it afterwards, or bale it if we're using a baler. So while we're running around creating these windrows, it's been a while since we talked about mods, so let's, or at least, you know, talked about mods in an up-to-date sense. So let's talk about mods. It's been a while. And we've had a whole host of mods go live this week on consoles, including some that went live earlier today on Friday. Obviously, we had the update for this map today, which I've kind of been waiting for before I got this episode done. I wanted to sort of incorporate the update into the next episode, so that's kind of worked out a little bit fortuitously. But on top of that, we also had a plastic greenhouse, or plastic foil greenhouse. This is a new placeable. Works pretty much in the same way as the tomato and lettuce greenhouses that we already have, just with a slightly different design. Actually looks kind of nice, and that should produce a nice little bit of income for us. Again, we'll need manure and water to really get the best out of that, and I think I might actually use those on Deut's farm in the future, so maybe we'll be featuring that pretty soon. We've had a placeable Christmas tree because it's December, why not? So we have a placeable Christmas tree, which I may well feature on one of my videos closer towards Christmas itself. We'll see. We've had a BDF frame, which is a really useful little small transport trailer. Now, I really like the look of this. I haven't had the chance to really kind of play about with it yet and try it out, but it looks really, really good. As a great way to transport small quantities of pallets and fertilizers. Again, I think that's something that is going to work really well on Deut's farm, you know, given it's our small little very small operating farm there. We've had a new Fiat tractor, the Fiat 120C, another tracked Fiat for us to kind of play about with there. That looks kind of cool. Let's get lined up. So, this is going to make the border very, very wide, but here we go. It's lower. And off we go. Going across the bottom of the field. What else have we had? Obviously, the update to this map. We had the Voucher N Series Suomi 100. This is an official Giants mod, which is essentially just a slightly reskinned Voucher N. So functionally, it's exactly the same as the default one that we have in game. The only difference is that it loses its customizable body color. It's only available in white and has a blue flash on it. And this has been released to celebrate 100 years of Finnish independence. A special tractor in the colours of the Finnish flag there. We've had a sapphire cultivator, which looks as though it can hook up to a slurry spreader as well, which is quite useful. It looks really, really good. That's by Vertex Design. More on Vertex in just a moment. Picking a line and sticking to it. We've obviously had the Valley the Old Farm. Now, if you haven't seen my map tour, I will pop a link up for you at the end of this episode. I'll also put a link in the video description as well, so do check that out. It's a fantastic map. We've had a bale autoloader pack. Haven't had the chance to really play about with this yet either, but looking forward to sort of trying that one out when I get some spare time. A great way to actually auto-load bales onto a trailer. It has a couple of really useful little hints and tricks as well. And then, obviously, beyond that is kind of stuff that we've kind of covered on our Platinum farm as well. But beyond that, you know, we have seen some other bits and bobs, you know, be confirmed. The biggest part of that is, obviously, we know that we were definitely going to get the Horsch pack, the Aggravation pack, which was created in partnership with Giants and Horsch by Vertex Design, the winning entry from the mod contest. And I did, about a week ago, when I recorded some episodes for the Platinum Edition farm for Estancia Lapacho, I did kind of wonder how we would be getting that, because on PC it was a nice straightforward download, and PC don't have to worry about mod storage. We do on console, and I was concerned that maybe that thing would be absolutely massive. Well, it's officially been split into two sections, which is something I figured would probably be the case, but it has now definitely been confirmed that is what's going to happen. So what we have is the Aggravation map that is currently in testing. And also in testing is the Horsch CTF pack. Now this is the equipment itself. So it'll be available in two parts. Part 1 will be the equipment and part 2 will be the map. And this is, I think, the right way to do it, because as a single combined pack, it kind of forces people to have a map that they might not want to play just to be able to get the equipment. And it's going to be an absolutely huge file size in that, you know, if it was one single thing. It would be way too big. It would eat up at least, I would say, a quarter of our total mod storage. So it's great that we actually have that split up into two sections so that you can have the equipment without being penalized by having to have a map installed that you might not want to actually play on. So both of those are in testing. They are flagged as Giants mods because you know, they are having to be worked on specifically by Giants to incorporate some of the coding and the scripting in those mods for consoles. It does mean that they do require a little bit of extra work, and as we know from the past, anything that is a flagged official as an official Giants mod is something that gets tested while it's being developed. Now we saw this with the Amazon Pantera. That thing took an absolute eternity to get through testing. It took weeks and weeks of testing before that was finally made available, and that was flagged as Giants. Expect the same with the Horsch CTF pack and the Aggravation map. Just because they're showing it as in testing does not mean that they are literally just a couple of days away. They are flagged as Giants mods, so they could be in testing for the next month before we actually get them. It's great to see that they are being tested and they are being worked on, but do not just assume that because they're in the testing thread we are very, very close to getting them, because that may simply not be the case. So just something to be wary of there. Don't get overexcited when you see them in testing every day. It doesn't necessarily mean that we are moments away from getting them. Like I said, as they are official Giants mods, they are tested all through their development phase. So they are going to be permanent fixtures of that list, and I would suspect probably for at least another 2 or 3 weeks, maybe even longer. Who knows? You can see just how big these windrows are getting. Going to be a lot of grass for us to collect here. A lot of material to then transfer into the bunkers there. We won't fill a bunker. We're going to be nowhere near filling a bunker, I don't think. But we will make a nice sort of dent in one of them, which will be a great way to sort of kick us off on our silage mission. And we are pretty much out of time, so what I'm going to do is kind of end the episode here. Oops, I need to... oh, it is turned on. I thought for a second it wasn't turned on. I'm going to end the episode just here. Don't forget, you know, if you're new to the channel, then welcome. And don't forget you can reach me on my Facebook page. It's been a while since I kind of plugged that. So on my Facebook page I discuss upcoming mod news and mod releases, not just for Farming Sim but also for other games that I play as well. So SimCity, not SimCity, sorry, City Skylines. It's a very SimCity style of game. Also Mud Runner, Formula 1. I'm going to be doing some Elite Dangerous in the new year as well. Looking forward to getting that up and running on the channel, and you'll be able to see, you know, news both in terms of, you know, videos that I'm putting out, anything I want to discuss, and also relevant patch news and mod news for those games on my channel. You can find all of that information on my Facebook page, and I will link that in the description below. That is facebook.com/JimBob Plays Games. Do pop over, check it out and say hi. Here is the link to the Black Sheep Modding Valley the Old Farm map tour. Please do check that out as well. It's a fantastic map. I absolutely love it. We're going to be doing a Let's Play on that in the new year. Once we've finished with Estancia El Pacho, that's only going to run till the end of January, or at least sometime in January, probably the end of January. And then we'll be heading over to the Valley, the Old Farm, and getting a Let's Play set up there as well. Still looking at bringing the West Coast to the channel in some form as well. So plenty of great content coming up next year. And I thank you all for watching, and I will see you all again very soon.